4th down and 2. You just need 2 more yards to win the ball game in a milking situation, or you need those 2 yards in a situation where you know your opponent has their zone drop set to prevent that short check down. In today's video, I'm going to show you guys how to make a purple zone of any zone drop depth or stock move up the field and leave the flat wide open. Let's go ahead and get into it. What is up, guys? Zan from the Zan Mountain YouTube channel. Today's video, we're going to show you guys how to manipulate curl flat zones. These could be stock curl flat zones that you find in a cover 3 or cover 4 drop based defense, but these could also be zone dropped. So if your opponent goes into their settings, a lot of times your opponent's going to set their curl flats to 0, 5, or 10, depending on the down in distance. Now, you guys have all faced a game where somebody likes to Mabel basically one side or the other.
You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch.
Now, you guys have probably faced opponents that like to run Mabel on one side, or maybe even the double Mabel, where they have basically those low purple zones on both sides, and then they have cloud flats over the top of those, and then even have a deep zone over the top of those to really shut down the sideline. This is a tactic on defense that a lot of players will use to shut down flooding combinations, especially when you want to throw away from their user towards the sideline. So in today's video, I'm going to show you guys how to do this from under center and from shotgun formations to make purple zones match a wheel route. So let's go ahead and get into it. I'm going to show this to you first out of my favorite formation, which is the single back bunch X nasty. This is an offense that I run and I have run since it was patched into the game early on in the season. Now, a lot of players really like this concept in which you put a flat and a wheel on the field together. And this is something that a lot of players will run to kind of open up the seam area of the field where the running back cuts out of the backfield. So naturally, if I were to go ahead and run a concept like you see right here, where I was going to basically go ahead and use Mooney on this flat route, you'll notice that any purple zone in the game will basically go out to that area. Now, the play art right here is glitched.
EA Sports.
So here you can see that we've got this cover 3 with these purple zones. And a lot of times what you're going to notice with this particular defense is that the flat route to Mooney is going to pull that purple zone out, allowing us to then throw this inside wheel route to the running back up the field. We've given this up all year long for many, many years in Madden. To be honest with you, this is a concept that a lot of players love to run. And if you basically run this concept against cover 3 or cover 4, you're going to be able to steal a quick basically 10 yards right up the seam to that running back. So again, you see right here that, you could throw this ball inside pass lead, and that's, 12 yards, pretty simple. Now, what a lot of players will do is they will start to set zone drops on their field. And a lot of them will do that on a down and distance in which they want to take away the quick flat. So a lot of players, when they play defense in Madden, is they will basically go to a setup that looks kind of like this. This is referred to as Mabel Coverage. And essentially with this, you have a cloud flat that a lot of players will set to like 25 or 30 yards. So to mimic that, I'm going to click onto Sullivan and I'm going to move him all the way back to a depth of about 25 yards away. So a 25-yard blue would stand right here where Sullivan is. Now, most players will set their purples to 0, 5, or 10. So with Rashawn Gary in this curl flat or this purple zone, you would anticipate that that would be dropping back to 5 or 10 yards. Now, with this particular concept, we're going to introduce a way that can make a purple zone run up the field. This is especially useful if your opponent is really, really keyed in on the fact that you're basically running this wheel. So let's say, for the sake of argument here, that our opponent, mans up the running back. Let's say that maybe they put a defensive tackle on him or something, right? So in this situation, your opponent is using Campbell in the middle of the field, and they individually man up the running back to prevent you from throwing that wheel, or at least kind of scare you from throwing that as it turns up the field. So naturally, with this concept, if we were to go and throw this, you're going to end up kind of, spooked out from throwing that wheel. Now, right there, the D tackle didn't get out and guard him. Don't worry about that. Obviously, if there were a linebacker or something on him, if he were individually manned up, you would not take that wheel route. That's kind of what we're focusing on right here. If you guys are enjoying this free YouTube content, I would strongly urge you to go over to my strategy website. GridironGamePlans.gg is your one-stop source for all things competitive Madden. Every week in our Vault Update, we take a look at the meta, or the most effective tactics available being used by pro players on the MCS circuit, breaking down not only how and why the pros do what they do, but most importantly, how you can counter those metas when you face them in online gameplay. On top of that, your subscription also includes any and every offensive and defensive game plan released on the website while your subscription is active, and access to our Discord server, where every single Wednesday we have a live lab session covering the week's vault content and any questions you guys have about Madden. So make sure you guys head over to gridirongameplans.gg. $9.95 per month unlocks the entire website. When your opponent is shutting down this wheel route combo, what we're actually looking to do with this is use the wheel route to still be a pull route in this offense. So let's go ahead and go back to that same setup that we just had, where we have, maybe a Mabel Coverage, and then they're manning up the running back. We'll go ahead and put him as the manned up player, and then we'll pretend that this guy's using the middle of the field. So for this situation, what you're going to want to do is, if the running back isn't there, what you're going to want to do is make sure that you have a streak as well on the same side as the running back wheel. And what that is going to effectively do is this is going to cause this purple zone to start counting. So when you take a look at the vertical threats on this play, when Cole Kmet runs vertically, Rashawn Gary is okay basically letting that streak to Kmet run behind him. So that's the first guy that he's let go, because basically there's help behind him, whether it's a deep zone to the outside or a middle third, right? So the purple zone will let that guy go. But then what ends up happening is that running back wheel, which we've manned up to take away this throwing option, will then also turn up the seam behind that streak. And at that point, regardless of whatever the zone drop is of the purple zone, Gary will turn into man-to-man on that. So if you factor in that a lot of players like to set their zone drops for blue zones to 25 or 30, I'm going to stay clicked onto Sullivan and kind of hold him right here, so that way he doesn't bite back. But I want you to kind of pay attention here to what happens to Gary in that purple zone as it relates to Mooney in the flat. So we snap the ball and we're going to hold on to it. And then what you're going to see is that purple zone turns and follows, which leaves this flat wide open. So if you can buy some time, you will be able to throw the ball to this player out in the flat wide open for an easy grab. Let me go ahead and show this to you again. I'm just going to call just a regular cover 3 here, and I want you to watch Sullivan on this play, and I'm going to spy off the pass rush, because again, it doesn't really matter what the zone drops are. This applies to purple zones no matter what. So if you have a streak, a wheel, and a flat on the same side of the field, what you're going to end up with is late in the play, that purple zone that is guarding B is going to turn and he's going to follow Y. And then you could dump the ball down underneath for an easy gain. Now, why is this a good tip? The 2-man rush is actually really, really popular right now. In fact, there's a 2-man rush glitch that is out there that still allows those players to shed while rushing 2. So you're going to see a lot of defenses that are only rushing 2 and playing max coverage, whether that be the nickel 3-3-5 wide or the nickel 2-4-5 odd, or any other defense that you might come across in Madden right now. But one thing that kind of is a unified approach, no matter what defense you see, is that players, when they go to a coverage look, they all like to Mabel, which involves that purple zone, which is oftentimes the low zone in their defense. So anytime you're facing that Mabel or that double Mabel style defense, say for instance the Mike Blitz 3, this is going to be a really, really good defense to run, because what ends up happening is you face a lot of guys who will end up playing something like this, and then they will just user the middle of the field on their own with their user. So let's say for instance here that we decide to run something kind of weird like this. We've got a streak, a flat, and then I'm going to use this drag wheel, which we've talked about extensively here on the channel. If you sit on this, I want you to watch how the purple zone on the left behaves. So once that guy turns up the field, you notice that it's not the same, right? So this drag wheel that we talked about, over the course of the last week or two, we introduced this route here on the channel. It does not behave the same as a traditional wheel to the running back. So let's now go ahead and show you how this applies in shotgun. So when we go into a shotgun based offense, let's go ahead and just run, say for instance, you can do this out of bunch. You can do this out of tight as well. Let's go ahead and do this out of like a regular gun bunch. So mesh post, really, really popular, right? When we talk about mesh post, obviously we know that, the wheel is kind of the feature route in this play that you have to guard. So it would be, pretty common that your opponent would man up the running back or user him, right? So in this situation, let's say that we motion Cole Kmet across, we put him on a streak or a flat. We'll go ahead and do basically a streak first. And you run this concept, if you were to go ahead and do something like this, you're gonna see that commit runs first, then the wheel runs second. Right here, the purple zone does not end up doing this the same way. So how do you impact this purple zone matching? Well, you're gonna have to try to do this to the strength of the bunch side. So if you motion him, you have a flat to, anybody, could be B, and then you have some sort of vertical route. Let's go ahead and put commit on that vertical. You could go ahead and do something like this, where now this simple little zone beater will apply in the same fashion. So again, right here, we're going to take a look at Rashawn Gary here, this player, and it's going to behave very similar to what we were just running. So we have the streak, then we have this wheel, and then you're going to watch Gary turn around and run. Now, again, the zone drop still matters, so that's why B got covered late in the play. But the general consensus here is that most players are going to zone drop their blues to whatever depth. If you're catching somebody in a stock cover 3 or cover 4, you're going to be able to manipulate that purple zone no matter what, and there's going to be no blue on the sideline at all. So from a standpoint of looking at this from a replay, this guy in the blue is more often than not dropping to like 30 yards. So ignore the fact that he rallies down on this flat. If they had this blue set to any depth whatsoever, you're going to end up with a wide open flat. Right here, he rallies down, but again, imagine that he were sitting at 25 or 30 yards on the sideline. That very clearly is going to make that wide open. So that's kind of how you would do it out of like a gun bunch, for instance. So let's talk about mesh spot out of the gun type flex. This would be a candidate that you could use to manipulate purple zones, even if they're zone dropped or not. So again, with the same type of concept here, you might go ahead and motion Godwin across, give yourself some sort of, check down option. But in this situation, if you look at the purple, you should see this similar behavior where that purple zone should turn and run, and that's going to leave your B receiver down underneath, wide open, and you're going to be able to pick up those cheap yards underneath. So this is how you do this out of shotgun or under center. This is a really, really good tip for anybody that runs Mabel Coverage or likes to use their purple zone set to 0 or 5 or 10 as kind of their underneath flat. You can get them out of the way and attack the sideline underneath. It doesn't have to be just a flat route. If you can learn how to scheme slants, from one side to the other, as that purple zone turns and follows the wheel, you can actually do some pretty crazy stuff with that. But this is just the cusp of that tip. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, make sure you guys give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or complaints, be sure to drop those below. Always like to hear what you guys are thinking on the channel. We'll see you guys tomorrow with our next video upload. Until then, this is Zan. Get in the lab and good luck.